There's a profound universal prank pulled on those who dive deeply into spiritual pursuits. The punchline. What you believed you were seeking isn't what you end up discovering. You imagined chasing joy, serenity, or an endless escape from the hassles of human existence. Instead, you trip right into truth itself. Music, unvarnished, straightforward, brutally candid truth. And truth, it seems, isn't always kind or easy. Sure, it's authentic beyond doubt, but agreeable? That's a whole different story. The odd part is, after you've sampled this truth, after peering past the veil, you'd never swap it for any cozy delusions out there, no matter the sting. Spiritual enlightenment isn't the glossy product hawked in trendy philosophies. It doesn't mean endless euphoria or a lifelong break from life's challenges. In fact, it's pretty much the reverse. It's like donning lenses that reveal what's been hiding in plain sight, the stuff others have collectively decided to ignore. And once those lenses are on, you can't just remove them when the sight grows uneasy. That's the grand universal gag of enlightenment. You end up like a person with flawless hearing in a society full of the musically challenged. The clashing notes that always existed now echo sharply and clearly in your mind. Allow me to outline 7 discomforts that tag along with this enlightenment. Not to scare you off, but to reassure you that if these hit home, you're not losing your grip. You're not damaged, you're just alert in a realm, mostly caught in slumber. The initial discomfort hits when you pierce through the facades of achievement. You start spotting how nearly every action people take, every accomplishment society applauds, is just performance art. The executive in his power attire, the academic music with her credentials, the parent with the flawless home life. They're all embodying parts, and it clicks for you. You detect the facade, the outfit, the lines they're reciting. It only aches because of this. They remain oblivious to it. Picture viewing a film where the performers have lost track of their pretense. They've sunk so deep into their roles that they mistake the on-screen turmoil for actual life. There you are, aware of the rigs, the spotlights, the crew shouting cues. You yearn to shout, "La the actors quote Bartu." Yet they tune you out. They're occupied upholding their persona, shielding their image, ensuring the act holds up. This breeds a unique isolation. Folks surround you, yet those former bonds feel strained. Chats that used to captivate now ring empty. Worries that once loomed large seem petty. Not because you're elevated, but because you've glimpsed the truth beyond. And once glimpsed, you can't erase it. The next discomfort is the crumbling of your former self-concept. Pre-enlightenment, music, your identity felt solid. You had your narrative, your history, your core sense of being. I'm such and such a type. I hail from this background. I possess these traits, these shortcomings, these goals. It formed a secure cage, that self-image. It offered steadiness, a clear spot in the universe, but enlightenment melts it away. Music. You come to understand that the you you've guarded for years, the figure you've portrayed, is merely another act. It's a bunch of recollections, routines, likes, yet it's not enduring. More akin to a swirl in a stream, seeming structured but really just the current swirling briefly. This insight can unsettle deeply. If I'm not this ego, not this tale, then who or what am I? Music. The foundation under you vanishes. You release the supports you've clutched, all that anchored your sense of importance. Music evaporates, stranding you in an empty expanse. Mystics term this the dark night of the soul, and it hurts every bit as much as the name implies. The third discomfort involves witnessing those nearby endure avoidable torment, powerless to mend it. You observe companions fretting over irrelevancies, pursuing hollow satisfactions, clinging to stances that breed extra misery. You see them ensnared in their thoughts, captive to their own ideas, and it shatters your compassion for them. The real sting isn't their hardship per se. Music. Hardship weaves into existence, into the flow of things. The sting lies in recognizing its pointlessness. It's like beholding someone repeatedly slamming into a barrier, believing enough force will yield their desire. You ache to intervene. Cease. Simply halt. The barrier isn't the foe. You're forging your own anguish. but the message falls on deaf ears. They're too absorbed in the pounding. And then, music you observe. You see folks wrecking their connections simply because they refuse to drop the need to be correct. You witness them wearing themselves out in pursuit of accomplishments that leave them empty no matter what. Music. You observe them erecting barriers around their emotions to shield from the exact affection they're craving most, and it leaves you powerless, knowing that until they choose to stir awake, no words from you will get through. The fourth ache stems from the load of accountability. After gaining that sharp insight, after grasping the mechanics of existence, you can't drift through it blindly anymore. With each move you make, each phrase you utter, you're conscious of the consequences. You notice the waves extending from your every deed. This consciousness serves as both a blessing and a heavy yoke. Prior to this shift, you could brush off your actions. I was furious. It wasn't intentional. My mind was elsewhere. Yet now you realize every instant is a decision. Even those knee-jerk responses are selections you've repeated so often they've turned into routines. You understand you're shaping your reality one breath at a time. Consequently, you can't point fingers at others for your distress any longer. Sure, it's freedom, but it demands so much. No more gliding along. No more stumbling through days and a days. Each second calls for mindfulness, focus, intention. It's draining in a manner that those still slumbering can't comprehend. They imagine enlightenment means you've solved the puzzle, that you're now drifting beyond everyday woes. But in truth, you're more immersed in those woes than before. You simply engage with them in a new way. The fifth ache involves the fading of your aspirations. Not everyone, of course, but those rooted in delusion. The vision of turning into someone extraordinary, of reaching a point of wholeness, of attaining a milestone that proves your value. These visions, which propelled you for years, music, start to disintegrate. You recognize that the ego yearning for spiritual insight is precisely what blocks it. The desire to stand out only highlights feelings of mediocrity. The quest itself fosters the illusion of lack. It's akin to a pup pursuing its tail. The pursuit generates the gap. This stings because those aspirations provided purpose. They were your guiding light, your drive to rise each dawn. Now exposed as mere illusions, self-deceptions you indulged in. What happens when the foundation of your drive crumbles? When the query, "What does it all mean?" yields no fulfilling response. The sixth ache is the crumbling of assurance. Pre-awakening, you likely held firm beliefs on numerous matters. This is just. That is unjust. This holds water. That doesn't. Existence unfolds thus, not otherwise. Such convictions offered stable footing. They instilled security, assurance, direction. But enlightenment uncovers a reality that's infinitely more dynamic, more enigmatic than your notions suggest. The deeper you peer, the less you can claim to grasp. Esteemed spiritual teachers invariably express with humility, accepting that existence transcends every framework or tag we devise. This isn't pretended restraint. Music. It's a sincere grasp of the boundless nature of reality. This erosion of assurance might leave you adrift. In discussions, you pause, add caveats, opting for, "from what I perceive," or "based on my path," instead of sweeping assertions. Others might view you as indecisive, music, as if you've shed your resolve. But really you've grown truer to the boundaries of human knowledge. The seventh ache, maybe the most profound, music, involves acknowledging your role in all hardship, not merely your personal trials, but the collective anguish. Music. You start perceiving no divide between external chaos and internal turmoil. Global conflicts echo the strife within your spirit. The avarice ravaging landscapes links to your personal clinging. Divisions fueled by animosity mirror your aversion to reality. This isn't self-reproach or masochism, it's perceiving the reality of unity. You're not an isolated entity facing an outer realm. You're the realm experiencing itself through this unique lens. Thus, each lapse in awareness, each bout of unmindfulness, each preference for dread over compassion, you view them all as your duty. This doesn't imply you're solely culpable for the world's ills. That would be the ego inflating its role, even in remorse. Here's you. It signifies understanding that transformation initiates within you, that mending the planet commences with tending your inner world. And that's an immense burden to shoulder, music, since you can't resolve it entirely. You can't rouse the entire globe alone. You can merely contribute your share, instant by instant, music, and have faith that it counts. Now, after laying out these struggles for you, I need to emphasize this point clearly. These aches aren't indicators that you've ored or that you ought to remain in slumber. Far from proving that spiritual enlightenment is a bad notion, they're actually expansion pains. Picture the unease of a butterfly emerging from its chrysalis, or a sprout bursting forth to grow into a mighty oak. In truth, the real alternative to these discomforts is the torment of perpetual unconsciousness. And believe me, that's infinitely more agonizing, even if it's subtle and unfelt. It's the suffering of existing in discord with your core reality, of embodying masks that choke your essence, of passing away without ever truly experiencing vitality. This kind of anguish is so pervasive for so many that it blends into the fabric of their daily lives, no longer perceived as distress at all, just a constant undercurrent to their being. By contrast, the throes of enlightenment are the birth pangs of authenticity. They arise inevitably from opting for honesty over ease, mindfulness over diversion, engagement over avoidance. Sure, they sting, but in the same way that workouts strain your body or bright light stings eyes, long accustomed to shadow. It's the resurgence of sensation in parts of you that had grown desensitized. What's fascinating to me about these struggles is how they persist, yet your perspective on them evolves. Initially, they seem like curses, as if something's gone terribly awry. But over time, if you remain present amid them, they unveil their wisdom. Every discomfort holds a deep insight into the essence of the world, your own identity, and the enigmatic beauty we term life. The hurt of piercing societal facades fosters empathy. You come to understand that folks are navigating with whatever insight they've got. Freed from a rigid ego to protect, you flow effortlessly, adapting and thriving in the now. Witnessing others' hardships builds endurance and modesty. You can't rescue those unwilling. The weight of accountability instills wholeness. Each deed counts. Every decision molds the world. Letting go of shattered aspirations urges you to inhabit the current instant, not some fantasy tomorrow. Facing the unknown cultivates ease with enigma, embracing inquiries instead of insisting on resolutions. And acknowledging your role in collective woe reveals the inseparability of individual and cosmic realms, that tending to your inner self is the ultimate contribution. Here's a striking irony. As you grow more attuned to these hurts, you also toughen in spirit, not by building barriers or numbing emotions, but by gaining the strength to cradle suffering without letting it shatter you. To sense profoundly without drowning, to remain receptive despite the sting. This is the lesson of the enlightened, not evasion of hardship, but a graceful interplay with it, allowing it to pass through without owning you, channeling it into expansion instead of withdrawal. Suffering transforms into a melody, not always harmonious, but integral to the rhythm. And something rarely mentioned about this journey toward awareness. In time, these pains take on a bittersweet quality, not from some twisted enjoyment of torment, but from grasping them as the cost of genuine vitality. You wouldn't swap your clarity for that former fog of unawareness. These trials are valuable precisely because they arrive bundled with authenticity, a raw connection to existence, unfiltered by defenses or illusions. You start viewing them as markers of vitality itself. Inanimate objects sense nothing. Only the truly vital encounter the spectrum of human trials, pains included. A peculiar delight emerges from this awareness. Yes, vigilance aches, but heavens, it's preferable to oblivion. Those on the path of awakening tread an intriguing trail, more exposed yet sturdier simultaneously. They dive deeper into emotions without being rattled by them. They discern the deceptions yet join the flow. They spot the pretense and engage wholeheartedly anyway. This is enlightened living, immersed in the world without belonging to it, experiencing all without attachment, valuing intensely while grasping loosely. So if these sensations are yours, Step right in. Join the Fellowship of the Awakened. It's no simple membership, but it's true to the core. We don't fabricate an idealized existence. We don't soften harsh truths. We confront reality head-on and cherish it regardless. We shoulder the ache of being and fold it into the greater enigma. Keep in mind, you can't deliberately revert to sleep once roused. The process rolls on, wanted or not. But fighting it only amplifies the misery. Instead, yield to it. Let it guide you where it will. Let the lessons unfold as they will. Allow whatever it seeks to impart. The aches are inevitable regardless. Yet, in yielding, they transform into guides instead of barriers. Music. Now, I'll reveal one last insight to you. Beyond these hurts, or more precisely, at their very core, lies something immune to suffering. There's a consciousness that observes every moment without being scarred by it. There's a serenity that doesn't arise from calm surroundings, but from complete independence from them. This is the revelation that comes to those spiritually awakened. Not a flight from agony, but a realm of existence that precedes any torment. Not the lack of hardship, but the emergence of an essence that remains unscathed amid the turmoil. This forms the deepest riddle. The sufferings are genuine, yet they strike no true self. They are felt completely, but they pose no real threat. It may come across as abstract theory at this point, particularly if you're grappling with one of these trials. And that's perfectly all right. Clarity will arrive in its own time. For the moment, recognize that what you're going through is entirely ordinary. It's a segment of the route trodden by so many before you. Those who are spiritually alert aren't extraordinary beings, they're just conscious. And true awareness involves embracing it all, confronting it all, staying fully engaged with the raw chaos of life. It's agonizing and wondrous. It's draining music and invigorating. It's the end of the identity you once clung to and the arrival of your authentic self. So hold your sufferings with ease. They're not weights to cast off. They're fellow travelers on this voyage, signals that you're vibrant, alert, and wholly immersed in the enigmatic rhythm of life. And that, dear ones, makes every twinge worthwhile.